was really an accomplishment because he's trying.
In the previous video, Dr. Tomlinson talked about instruction by design and how differentiation can work to create a powerful curriculum. In this video, Dr. Tomlinson will examine two non-negotiable elements of differentiation: respectful tasks and ongoing assessment. Dr. Tomlinson will present examples of respectful tasks that ensure that curriculum is equally meaningful and appealing to all students. She will also introduce the idea of ongoing assessment as a means of ensuring the effectiveness of instruction. And now, Dr. Tomlinson.
Questions or anything there that you'd like to raise, comments, insights? I don't know if life is reaching a state of near perfection or near hopelessness. Which is it? Yeah.
I think that this is a great way to help teachers move towards the big picture. I personally am not to turn this into, Kim's personal advice session, but it's really difficult in some places like where I am, that high stakes testing, moving our test scores becomes kind of paramount in the minds, especially where I am. I have a lot of inexperienced teachers. And the bottom line is they figure out pretty quickly that it's easy to move kids on a standardized, criterion reference test by just poking them full of facts and teaching them how to bubble and choose from multiple choice.
Yeah, the standardized test thing, of course, is a huge push, but let me just tell you this, guys, and you kind of think about yourself. Now, again, we have a little disadvantage. You guys are really good at math, science, and technology, or you wouldn't be in this room. You get it. You got it in school. That's why you went back. Very few of us go back to teach stuff that we have no clue about. But that disadvantages us in the sense that it's hard for us to get, that kids don't get it sometimes. And so we're saying stuff that's perfectly clear and logical, and they should be able to get it. The truth of the matter is, if we just stuff stuff into kids, and that was easy and effective, how would they do on tests? What do you think? If saying it to them and getting them to copy it down and practice the bubbles worked, where would our scores be? Up, because we're covering that stuff and saying it like crazy people. When I show you these examples, Dick didn't stand in front of his class and talk about those three things, and those were the only words he ever uttered. What he showed the kid was how the information made sense under that umbrella, how they fit together. So it's not that you're not teaching the knowledge and the skills, it's that you're teaching them in a way that causes them to be memorable and useful. And what we find time after time when teachers do that is kids score better. They don't score worse because they remember, they understand, and they can retrieve stuff and use it better. So I think we'd have a really hard sell if we were trying to get teachers to do something and saying, oh, just forget all that information, forget all that skill stuff, the kids will be fine. What we're saying is teach the kids to make sense out of the stuff so that it doesn't feel daunting and overwhelming. And by the way, I understand the test pressure, but I also believe mostly we're ethical people. And I have a hunch most of us want the kids to remember the stuff we taught them more than 5 minutes after they leave the classroom, and to be able to use it another year or to relate to it in life. And stuff that you memorize goes away really fast. The difference between a real struggler in school and a really able kid in school is the struggler forgets the stuff before the test, and the brighter kid waits till the test is over and then forgets it. If you don't understand it, you can't take it with you for very long. What was unique about Dick's kids was because they understood it, they actually took it to the next year with them, which was remarkable in the eyes of those teachers because they weren't used to the kids being able to remember what they learned last year and talk about it in a meaningful way. Somebody said to me once at a conference when I was a young teacher, and it's probably the most powerful piece of advice I ever got, a really excellent activity for kids is one that asks them to make or do something, because you have to have some manifestation of it, using essential knowledge and essential skills in order to understand or explore a big idea, an essential understanding. And that's how it comes together. Instead of just giving kids facts and things to memorize, you give them the facts and the skills, but in the context of an understanding so that they can explore the understanding. A powerful activity is one in which you ask kids to make or do something using essential knowledge and essential skills in order to explore or extend an essential understanding. And that brings the stuff together. So I think, again, it would be really tough and perhaps not even fair to teachers to try to sell something that says, who cares about the stuff that's on the test? Of course they have to care. What we're saying is, let's present it in a way that actually makes it better for kids and not worse. When you look at some of the tests like New York, where they have the Regents exam and kids have to be able to use what they've learned, we're dismal with it. Kids can remember the formula maybe, can't transfer it anywhere. When you look at the TIMS study or the NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, kids aren't terribly bad at the give back the knowledge piece. But when we say use it or transfer it, and it's because they don't understand what they're trying to learn. So I think it's really important for those of you who are in leadership positions, which again is pretty much everybody who's here. The fact that you're here in this arena will cast you into a leadership position because somebody's going to want you to explain something or share something or try something when you get back. To understand really that the curriculum piece is not about helping kids do worse. It's actually about helping them have stuff that's portable and useful, but not without the information. Okay, I want to try this one with you just really quickly, but it's an important principle, and that is the idea of respectful tasks in differentiation. And what that means is a task that's equally important. In other words, if you know what the essential knowledge and the essential understanding and the essential skills is, everybody should be working with that. It also means that the task should be equally pleasing when kids look at them. And I think it also means that every kid should have to think and reason to do the work. If you go back to the mindset thing, it's not helpful to believe that a few kids in our schools can think and everybody else can only repeat things. We have a whole universe of kids growing up to take over the world, and they all need to be able to think and reason, not just the top 5 or 10% of them. So let's take a look at this example from one teacher's classroom, and then go back and see what your thoughts with each other would be on these two tasks that teachers gave. It's a differentiated task, meaning that while all the kids are supposed to be working toward the same goal, they're going to do it in two ways. And one task says, complete the packet of worksheets on force and motion. You may choose to work with a partner if you'd like. Check your work with the answer key in the back of the room. And what the teacher did there was to have worksheets in colored folders on several aspects of force and motion that the kids were supposed to work through to kind of see how the different elements function. They could work by themselves if they wanted to, or with a partner, which is a kind of learning profile differentiation. And when they got the stuff finished, they could check it to see if they were right and then talk with each other about why not. Another group said, using your understanding of force and motion, drafting tools, and your strength as a scientist, make a blueprint for a new swing set for Parker Elementary schools to use during recess. So let's go back here. Chat with somebody next to you for a minute. What would you say to the teacher about these three aspects of respectful tasks? Talk about that for just a second. How's the teacher doing?
Much more engaging.
More engaged.
Most likely.
Yeah.
I doubt that those worksheets are going to
Right.
make them do backflips.
Right. And group A is probably her average and low average, and her group B is probably her high, who already probably have done some sort of worksheet to prove that they know it.
This is an application. This is just recall.
Incorporated in there so the kids think, oh, I do have that knowledge. I need to do that.
Including
the scientists, right. I've been in some of the lower grades where the teachers are actually saying, you know, think as a mathematician. You know, that's being.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm just saying I see why.
I mean, they're actually saying.
Okay, let's look by contrast at another example for a second and see how you feel like this teacher is doing. It's a social studies class looking at New World explorers. And for this particular lesson, she wants her students to know the names of some of the key New World explorers like Vasco da Gama or Magellan. And she had those listed in the lesson plans, which one mattered. She wants them to know what contribution each of those explorers made to opening up the world and what the big events were in that explorer's explorations. She wants them to understand that exploration involves risk, that it involves cost and benefits, and that it involves success and failure. In other words, whether it's in outer space or under the sea or in our own lives, when we explore something, there's some risk. There's almost always some benefit and some liability, and there's almost always a pattern of success and failure. We seldom get to nirvana instantly. And what she wants the kids to do is to use resource materials that are appropriate in order to extend their understanding or support their ideas that are here. So in this class, here are the two parallel tasks that kids are working on. One says, okay guys, I'm giving you a box of resources or a table of books and website links, and I'm going to give you a list of product options. You can express your work in this form, or this form. And what you need to do is show how two key explorers took chances, experienced success and failure, and brought about both positive and negative change. Use those resources to provide proof or evidence that this either is or is not the case with the people that you've studied. Take a look at this again, just 1 second, make sure it's clear in your head. Is it likely that the students who do this will get here? Yeah, it's pretty tight fit, I think. I think it's a pretty good match. This is well aligned with this. Okay, here's her second task. Using reliable and defensible research, in other words, I'm not going to give you the books and the website links, but you need to find some. Develop a way to show, in other words, I'm not going to give you 2 or 3 product options, I'm going to tell you to figure out a way to show what you're doing. How New World explorers were paradoxes. Include and go beyond the unit principles. Those big understandings are paradoxes. Instead of laying them out like she did here for them, she said, be sure to use the ones we've talked about and find some more. And if you were a kid and you came in the classroom and sat down and you got one assignment and some of your friends got the other assignment, to what degree would you feel that there was a favored group and an unfavored group compared to this thing? Can you see the distinction in those two tasks with just that term respectful of kids? In this one, that's a pretty hefty task. You know, that's not easy street. That's really expecting the kids to think, to reason, to make choices, follow through on something. It might be that with some of these kids you'd need to give them more explicit instructions or work with them in a group of 3 or meet with a small group and get them started. But then, as Kim said yesterday, it wouldn't be a bad idea after that to meet with some of these kids and make sure they're understanding the paradoxes and share some of the ones that they're extending and that kind of thing. But to me, this really speaks of respect of kids, clarity of goals, and high-level tasks, whereas that first one has got a clear set of winners and losers in it. Thoughts or questions there? Really helpful when you're developing stuff to say, if I were a kid, would I think this was cricket? Would I think that everybody in here had the same amount of the teacher's trust and respect? We talked about this the other day. Kids come to us with needs. Teachers make some kind of response, and that curriculum and instruction is the way that we respond. And if I give kids Twinkie stuff, I've just said something to them about my belief in them and my aspirations for them, how I sort of see them as learners. So that third cog that curriculum piece and the instruction piece is mostly how we say to kids what we believe about them and how we're investing in them. When I ask what I ask a student to do speaks really loudly to that kid about my aspirations for them. That first example that I showed you is, to me, a classic example of mindset. I'm going to give some of the kids this no-brainer stuff because really deep down I don't think they can do very much anyhow. I'll give them worksheets, let them check the answers. But here's a group of kids now who could really use what they've learned. And it makes a big difference when you see both sets of kids as high-level thinkers and productive people. Okay, let's look at another principle then, and this one we've alluded to, and I'm going to show you some of these examples, give you a minute to look at them to see what you think, but I suspect we've covered some territory here in regular sessions as well as this morning session. Ongoing assessment is the compass that lets us know where to go tomorrow. One of the sort of little evolutions that I've enjoyed recently in writing in education is the use of 3 prepositions. Prepositions aren't usually that revealing, but people for a long time wrote about assessment of learning. How do you assess what kids have learned? Is a performance assessment, a right answer assessment, an essay assessment, an oral assessment the best way to assess what kids have learned? How do you best get at assessment of learning? And I really think that for many, many, many years, that of word was where assessment was. Let's assess their learning, assessment of their learning. A few years ago, people started writing about assessment for learning, meaning not so much assessing whether the kid got it, but early on assessing whether they are getting it. Not to fill the grade book, which is the purpose of assessment of learning, but to let me know how to teach better tomorrow. And I think when we moved from assessment of learning to assessment for learning, assessment became much cooler. It can really help me teach better. It doesn't just give me kind of the bottom line in the grade book. In the last couple of years, a number of people have changed the preposition again, and they've moved from assessment of learning and assessment for learning to assessment as learning. And what that's really saying is, how about if the kids knew what the goals were? And the kids understood what these assessments are checking. And the kids could really assess some themselves to see where they're strong, where they're weak. They could help us make plans for how to get better because they see their deficits. I don't know about you and their strengths. I don't know about you, but schooling was mostly done to me. It wasn't done with me. And I'm not even sure it was done for me most of the time. It was mostly just done to me. So that notion of saying, well, sure, we need some summative assessment. Of course, we have to have the line in the sand where we say, how'd the kid do? But before that, what could we do to make assessment, make us better teachers and help kids be better learners and more invested learners? Critical to differentiation. We really need to be doing 3 kinds of assessment regularly. And I suspect we're getting better with this in recent years because of the thinking that people have been doing to guide us, but not quite sure we're there yet. We need to do pre-assessment to find out where these kids' starting points are, because we've created this curriculum and it has a starting point, but not all the kids' starting points are at the same place as the curriculum. So where's the kid when we start? Throughout the unit, we need to do ongoing or formative assessment constantly, not to grade it, not to fill the grade book, but to say, okay, we just worked with this. Who's with me? Who's not with me? Who's ahead of me? And then ultimately the summative assessment to make sure we got someplace. But if we just have this in mind, or if this is just about filling the grade book, or if we skip this, once again, we lose a lot of power as teachers. Pre-assessment should check to see kids' background knowledge. Do they know what we're talking about? Am I teaching students who don't have vocabulary of science or math or technology, and yet I'm forging ahead without that? A teacher in California last year told me a story about it. She was a veteran high school teacher, teaching a unit on the agricultural revolution. It's about a 3 or 4 week unit because it was her first one in the year, and she wanted to get everything set, routines and everything with the kids. About 2.5 weeks into the unit, and they'd read books, taken notes, looked at videos, all kind of stuff. About 2.5 weeks into the unit, kid raises his hand and he says to her, "So, what's agriculture?" 2.5 weeks on the agricultural revolution and he didn't know the word. And she said to me, I don't know why I'm confessing this, except I think I need to say to somebody, I will never again teach another unit without pre-assessing. And she said when he said that, I wanted to just fall through the floor, because that sense that I had a kid in the classroom who'd been listening for 2.5 weeks, not even knowing what the word was humiliating. And blessings on her, she wasn't mad at him, she was mad at herself. And then she said, right after that thought, I thought, how many times have I done that to kids in the past? How many times have I just assumed they had some knowledge? Wonder how many times we've assumed that they understood how one kind of math worked last year or one technology function and just build on that, and they don't. We need to be looking at the KUDs. So this is background stuff. This is what I'm getting ready to teach. Are they ready with the background? Where are they with what I think I'm getting ready to introduce to them? And we need to look at their interests and also at how they learn. So any of these things in pre-assessment can really help us do better. Ongoing assessment is checking real often through the unit to see if all the students know what they should know, understand what they should understand, and whether they can do what they should be able to do. Not to fill the grade book, but so you can adjust your instruction and say, you know what, these guys don't need the next 3 days I was planning to teach them. What's useful that I can do to extend them? Here's some kids that are shaky on what we did the last couple of days. They need a little consolidation here. And here's some kids who are still hung up on old stuff that's keeping them from doing the new stuff. How can I do better there? I want to share with you just a couple of examples of either pre-assessments or ongoing assessments that folks have used to make the point. Really, there are 1,000 ways to assess, and they don't have to be just real bulky. They don't have to take a lot of time from us. Look at that for just a second, and if you're a science teacher or work with technology classes in your school, pull out the word math and put in your subject. And ask yourself, how might it help me if I had this information from my students? What good is it to know that you've got a kid who thinks he's crummy in math? What good is it to have a kid tell you that a math student who's good is somebody who's just kind of born knowing math and, you know, his dad wasn't any good at it, he's not any good at it either? What good does it do you to know those things? Or does it?
That provides you the information to say, I need to approach this differently for this child than I do another kid that answers, boy, I love math. And that my job is to make sure that that attitude gets changed.
Don't change that attitude, boy, that math score is not going to change, just not. So to have this red flag and to say, here's a kid who doesn't think he can do it, it's just like Dick knowing that whole class was going to hate physical science because of the grapevine. And his thing was, I'm going to show them the first day that they already know almost all of this stuff, that they're dead wrong. Can you see the connection with mindset? Kid who says, I can't do that stuff. Nobody in my house can do it, not for anything, is the kid you need to be all over. On the other hand, I also want to know when there's a kid who says, what I'm best at in math is reasoning, and these are the strengths that I have, and this is where I've always been ahead of the game. I don't want to say to myself, okay, there's a kid to continue to show he's perfect. What I want to say is, I want to show this kid that there's challenge in math. I want to show this kid that there's room to plow new territory that he hadn't been. And so I want this little kid to get something that makes his dendrites sit up and salute every day too, rather than coming in thinking, I've got it all, I can do it all, I'm already perfect. I want both groups to have effort and to make that effort pay off, and I need to know that. This is an interest-based thing. It's an example of this. This also, by the way, is a pre-assessment. This is a pre-assessment where a teacher gave her kids some, in her case, just white puzzle pieces. And she had a batch of them. And she said, you can take as many segments as you want, 5, 7, 10. And on the front, I want you to tell me things that you're really interested in, stuff you like to talk about, read about, think about, watch about, do on a Saturday when you've got a little time. And if you want to, you can turn these over on the back and explain that a little bit to me. What is it that you do with this particular game or program or TV show? It's really hard for me to think of things that kids would be interested in that have no connection with math or science or technology. Those three subjects especially just connect with everything. There's math or science or technology or all three behind virtually any interest a kid has. A video game, cell phones, music, almost anything you can make the connection with. When you can show them that connection, your stuff becomes way cool because it's attached to their stuff. So teachers just trying to get a leg up on that. You got 120 secondary kids, you wait to find this out, it's going to be a while. Now this is an elementary task here, but you can do it with secondary kids in another way. Wait to find it out, it's going to be May or later. Start asking and you can begin to gather some data. This is an idea I just ran across a few weeks ago in a book I was reading, and it's, I really like it. It to me, speaks of the mindset thing again. Often we say to kids, what are you good at, what are you not good at, what are your strongest subjects in school, what are your weakest subjects? This is what the authors call strength-based assessments. And this teacher says, what's something positive people say about me? When I'm feeling great at school, it's probably because a dream I have for myself is, a thing I like spending time on is, something that captures my imagination is, the best thing about my family is, my strength as a learner is, what I can contribute to this classroom is, a thing I wish people knew about me is, and I'm proud of. What do you suppose a kid is likely to feel when they've completed that for a teacher? She really thinks there's something to me. She thinks I've got something to be proud of. She thinks I have dreams. He's expecting me to be a person with a vision. He's coming hunting for the good stuff. This honestly looks to me like a fluid mindset teacher. Any kid in the classroom has dreams, aspirations, strengths, things to contribute to this class. He's expecting I'm going to do that.
In the next video, Dr. Tomlinson will continue her examination of strength-based assessment and then move on to easy-to-use assessment tools such as exit cards and windshield checks.